What's coming up a lot for people in the podcasts and the work at the moment is people cannot see that there's actually a journey home. The mind is not geared to look at best case scenarios. In fact, it's geared to look at worst case scenarios, and that's exactly what it does. So we're going to go through life and we're going to hit things that we call problems. We're going to hit circumstances, events, and situations that we don't want to face. But inevitably, they're in our environment. Problems are part of nature and they're going to come towards us whether we like it or not. So that's a given. But that is not what we need to focus on. What we need to focus on is our response to these circumstances, situations, and events that come our way. And I think the good news for all of us when we're looking at our own radius of control is that we are very, very much in control of how we respond to situations. And through practice and through experience, through will, through higher levels of consciousness, of course, we can tackle problems far better than people who have not expanded their consciousness. Expanding our consciousness is like anything else. It's like playing the guitar or the piano. It takes work and practice. So often in life, we only do half the math sum. If there's a death of a beloved one, if there's an accident, if there's some sort of catastrophe, trauma, or crisis, we usually get confronted with the need to change. A divorce or a betrayal can actually end people up, of course, in states of depression, anxiety, torment, burnout, and fatigue like you can't imagine. But what we need to realize is that there is always a journey home from these situations. And that's what the mind is not going to help you with. It's something that you're going to need to remember. It's with insight like this that we can look around corners and see into our future and then plan accordingly. Life has us discovering who we really are through problems, trials, and suffering. And once we realize that these problems are like liminal spaces, temporary tunnels or portals that we've got to move through, we can actually keep our calm, keep our focus, and move forward with far, far less pain and suffering. At some stage in life, we're going to have to reinvent ourselves. What we had working for us is not going to work anymore at a certain point in life, which of course I call the second half of life. What served us in the first half is not going to serve us when different problems arise. So we're going to have to learn how to reinvent ourselves. And that can sound overwhelming in itself, but actually it can be the most freeing experience or journey that we ever take. So we can use the metaphor of a journey down a highway in terms of the journey of life, and to try and understand where we're coming from and how we need to respond to this never-ending road or a destination that we can't actually see. Where am I going to end up? And these things can be scary unless we learn how to take control in certain ways and let go of control in other ways. And that's exactly what we can learn in a very short space of time through becoming more mindful, more aware, and more conscious of where we're actually going. So imagine yourself driving down a highway in your car and not knowing where you're going. Automatically, straight from the start, that's going to bring around anxiety, right? You're going to be driving through the night wondering how long this is going to take. Will I ever get there? And all sorts of things will start to quickly overwhelm your general status quo. But sometimes through the journey of life, we're going to drive through storms. We're going to drive through hail and rain and snow. And if we sit there with no experience, with no faith, and with no trust in the process of life, we're going to sit there and obviously think to ourselves, this storm is going to last forever. But as we know, it never does. So when you're taking a trip down the highway and you do hit a storm, which is inevitable, you're going to have to remind yourself that you will get through this and this too shall pass. No storms last forever. And behind those clouds, the sun is always shining. So these are things we're going to have to consciously remind ourselves about as we take the journey back home in life to a place where we regain consciousness, where we regain, recover, renew ourselves That's the meaning of life. Everything is a cycle of life and death, of rebirth, of reincarnation or carnation. It's a spiritual journey. It might start off as a very physical one when we're young, and then a psychological and emotional one, as we've discussed before in the podcasts. And then it becomes spiritual, which means more of an inner journey is taking place. So when we're in our metaphorical vehicle driving down the highway of life, we've got to remember that the car is not who we are. It might look like that from the outside. If you were looking down from a satellite, from a UFO, it might look like the car was the thing driving itself down the highway. But as we know, that's not the case. The case is someone is behind the wheel, which is you, or behind the wheel of the vehicle. And in our own lives, psychologically speaking, you're the person driving the body, the heart, and the mind to a good destination. A destination which we have to think of before we get there. We have to perceive what destination that's going to be. Because as we know in life, you can take two roads. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that's made all the difference. That was Robert Frost. And it's so, so true. You got to take a journey, and at that crossroads, don't take a chance. You got to be prepared. So in our metaphorical highway, you're going to sometimes need to consult a map. You're going to sometimes need to stop, pull over, and say, whoa, let's refocus. Something we've got to do in life. The maps we use are what we learn here, what we learn through the books we read and the things that we listen to. And those tools that we learn there are going to be able to be used when we're actually on the road, when we're doing things in real time in the real world. Those tools are going to help us to get to our destination. So on our journey, we might get lost. It's going to happen. We might even have to take unexpected detours, and that's going to happen too. So becoming aware that these things are things that we're going to face as we move forward is something that if we accept and are aware of, we can take appropriate action in overcoming. So there's no need to be stuck with a flat tire on the side of the road, not wanting to get back on because we don't know where the road leads. We might as well just stay stuck. What we've got to realize is that we're on a journey back home. No matter how things might have been in our lives, we've got to remember for ourselves, because the mind's not going to help you do it. We've got to remember for ourselves that there's a destination and there's a route and a journey specifically that we can take that will lead us there in terms of the path of the least resistance. Sometimes through life, we might end up spending way too much time looking in the rearview mirror. There's a reason why it's so small. And looking forward is something that affirmations, meditations, contemplative practices, all these things help us be prepared that when we become aware that we're looking in the rearview mirror for too long, looking at what's behind us for too long, looking at where we've come from for too long, these tools can help us look forward through the large windscreen that's right in front of us. So pulling over and hitting a pause button in life is just as important, equally important to going forwards in terms of momentum. Just like us, cars need energy. They need fuel. They need gas. And those things come through contemplative practice. They come through you keeping your energies together. An innate sense of control comes through practice. It comes over time. It comes through prayer. It comes through practice. So what we've got to do today, if we want to change our lives, we've got to focus on where we're going. Understand that the journey is definitely part of the destination. I don't think these two things are separate. I think they go together. 1 + 1 equals reality. So where we're going necessitates a journey. Where we're going necessitates a journey. And that's exactly the path that you're on at the moment. What you might not know, you might not have opened your map. You might not have paused. You might not know which map to consult. And that's what you need to do now as you reinvent your life, as you might re-look at your destination. You might have to look at where you're going by pulling over for a while, taking the time to pause, and even put in new fuel. You build yourself up and then pursue on your journey. You don't just go until the fuel runs out or until the car just splatters and stops. You refuel constantly. And this is the metaphor that we can use to really, really get ourselves down the highway of life in the best way possible. One of the traps we can fall into is letting our journey and what happens to us and the detours and the pitfalls and the potholes in the road can actually lead us to believe that the cause of these things is our self-esteem. And that's, of course, not the case. We can't let external environments dictate how we should feel inside. If we link our confidence and our self-esteem and our internal power to what is happening on the outside, when trouble comes, we're going to have nothing left to drive us towards the destination. Finally, let's try and imagine for ourselves as we navigate this journey of life that our car had the new Tesla full autopilot capabilities. It didn't need you to drive. And all you did throughout your life is sit inside the vehicle, obviously representing your body, and do nothing. Sit inside the vehicle, being mindless, playing games, looking at maps, making paper airplanes of maps, who knows. But without having us learn how to navigate that vehicle, stay safely on the road, and continue to go around a bend or through a tunnel and knowing it's going to end, is very much part of the building process of who we really are as human beings. Life is definitely creating us as more and more conscious every day. If you want evidence of that, just look to 10 years ago, look to 5 years ago, look to 20 years ago, and you'll see when as conscious as you are today. So it's easy to see, if we think about it, what life is doing. It's making you more capable, more conscious, and more authentic. So if you were an autopilot in your car, you wouldn't be learning anything. There would be no purpose to you really being there. In fact, you might as well take an airplane flight to get to the destination while the car drives itself there. So autopilot is how we can walk around metaphorically mindless. It's how we can go year after year after year and not actually get somewhere. It is how we can find ourselves in situations where we say, I'm depressed today, I'm anxious, I'm afraid, I've lost my confidence. You could have lost it 3 years ago. If you weren't running on autopilot, these things wouldn't be lost. We'd be very, very aware of where we are in the present moment, and we'd be able to make minor tweaks as opposed to gigantic tweaks like recovering from 20 years of depression, as compared to these minor tweaks and map adjustments that we can make while we're looking at the view, assessing the terrain, and actually getting there ourselves through an experiential process of conscious awakening. So make sure you live every day of your life practicing contemplation, that is thinking about how you feel, using a pen to write down how you feel. All hurt, war, and trauma belongs on paper. It doesn't belong inside. So you need to get it out. So become fully aware of who you are, where you're going, why you're going there, and what you're doing it all for. So if you find your life is not working for you now or one day in the future, and you find yourself in unfamiliar, uncharted territory, stop, take a pause, and consult your map. That could be the big book, the Bible, it could be blogs, it could be vlogs, it could be whatever it is. So to get information, never mind inspiration from other people, today is easier than it's ever been. So use all the information and technology that you have before you and start calculating which way you want to go, where you want to be in 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade. Because without focus, we're not going to get there. We're going to go round and round in circles. Where focus goes, of course, energy flows. What's really, really important, judging from the questions that people have today, is I don't know if my life is going to get better. I cannot see a better life for myself unfolding. And this is where we get stuck in a box. And, being stuck in that box is not reality. Life has no boxes. The mind can make boxes, of course, but in real life, there are no boxes. So when the mind constructs one, you can tear it down, you can break it open, and then carry on your journey. So realizing that the mind has started to limit you, and it's always going to do that. If you're off in the past or if you're off in the future too much in your head and in your mind is going to limit you from going too far off into the past or the future. Of course it is. It's trying to help. But today, your mind is not enough to get there. You really, really have to feel. You really, really have to use all your energy, your faculties, and your talents to be able to navigate the journey of life. So understand that faith, they say that two things are required in life, effort and faith. And faith is the part where you've got to understand that there's something better, that you're going through a liminal space. You're going through something that's completely impermanent, and you're always going to be going through something completely permanent. In life, nothing is guaranteed except change. I don't even think death and taxes, as we were taught when we were young, are guaranteed. But change is guaranteed because life is unfolding. The journey is unfolding for a reason. And that reason is to make you the best that you can be, the most authentic you can be, and of course, the most loving that you can be. Fear has no place in a spiritual or awakened life. And riding around in your metaphorical car with the lights off, not knowing where you're going without the right maps, not being able to stop and actually look at the view along the way and re-energize yourself is going to end with negative consequences. So just remember that your mind cannot do negative consequences. It's not capable of it. Otherwise, no one would make mistakes. The mind is more capable of trying to avoid fear by putting your head into the sand. We need light in the darkness. We don't need more darkness. So use your practices every day. Shine the lights. Put those headlights on bright and steam forward to a destination that you know how it's going to end up, where you're going to end up. Because where we all end up is more and more conscious. We need to push through becoming more divine, more loving, and more authentically ourselves than we were yesterday or 10 years ago. That is the meaning of life, to become part of a divine, loving solution without fear. Okay? False evidence appearing real, or FEAR, forget everything and run. That's how the mind's built. That's how your nervous system is built. But you are not your nervous system. And you are not the journey or the destination. You are the driver behind the wheel of this body, this heart, and this mind. So literally, you need to show up for yourself. And that's why we have a higher self and a lower self. Showing up for yourself implies that there are two people, the person who's showing up and the one that's showing up for the other. So when you show up, that's a spiritual awakening, nothing less. And knowing that you're inside this whole thing, able to choose, to navigate, to decide, is a very, very empowering state of being. And this is what we wish you today, an empowered state of being. Power means action. And if you're able to take the right action every day, those little micro actions that you take are going to lead to something big, bold, and beautiful. And this is what we've got to remember. Every piece of effort and every stitch of faith that we put together is going to get us on a journey back home to our sacred selves. Don't let what happens on the journey, all the mistakes, all the traumas, all the wrong turns and detours, all the breakdowns and flat tires, don't let those things into you to become attached or linked to your self-esteem. You're a divine being that is brought into this world in a single cell. And every day there are trillions and trillions of cells just in your body and your brain that are developing and growing so that you can grow spiritually, so that you can become fearless. All love and no fear. That's the name of the game.